And we are live with another edition of the All Gas No Break Sports Show. I am one of your co-hosts, Nicholas Bavona, joined alongside by Andrew Johnson. Andrew, it's been a while since we talked about the NBA season. It's certainly been into a whirlwind, kind of a weird first half it's been for some teams. Some teams we expected that are currently in their certain matter are here at this certain spot in the season. And we are now just a couple of days away from not only the trade deadline, but also from the All-Star game this week. So I think it's a better time as any to not only recap the first half of this NBA season, but to now look into the second half of the season, as well as potential trade deadline acquisitions for some teams.
Yep, we're a couple days away from the trade deadline. I think 3 days to be exact as of this recording in February. And we've had a crazy first half of the season. We have dynasties dying. We have teams rising. It's a very exciting time to be an NBA fan. A lot of these teams we did expect to be here. However, a couple of them are really big surprises this year. Some certain New York team I want to talk about in a little bit. But
Yeah.
let's get into it, Nick. What do you want to start with?
I think we should talk about first, we talked about those surprise teams. I think let's dive in first off. Let's talk about what's happened so far in both the East and the Western Conference before we talk into who's been a surprise for us, who's been a disappointment for us, and kind of where we're looking at going into the second half of the season. As you know, in the Eastern Conference right now, the top 6 seeds are Boston, Cleveland, Milwaukee, the Knicks, Philadelphia, and Indiana. And then the play-in teams are currently the Orlando Magic, the Miami Heat, the Chicago Bulls, and the Atlanta Hawks to round that out. And in the Western Conference, you have the Oklahoma City Thunder as the 1 seed. They're currently tied with the Timberwolves for that 1 seed. Then it's the Clippers, Nuggets, Kings, and the Suns. And then the play-in teams are the New Orleans Pelicans, Dallas Mavericks, Lakers, and Utah Jazz. So some of those teams that I just listed are definitely some very surprising teams that we mentioned. Obviously, when we went into our prediction show, we didn't expect to see, for example, the Oklahoma City Thunder being tied for the best record in the Western Conference. It's certainly not seeing that they'd be tied with the Minnesota Timberwolves. We did not expect these two teams to be, at this point in the season, 20 games over 500 and battling it out for a potential home court advantage for the entire Western Conference playoffs. So those two teams definitely have something to be proud about what they've done in this first half of the season. And on the East side of things, I think realistically the most surprising thing that I've seen personally is kind of for these teams. You expected Boston and Milwaukee and Philadelphia to be those teams in the playoff picture, as well as Cleveland, especially as of late. Cavaliers have been one of the hottest streaks in all the NBA. But same thing with the Knicks. They were a team that we both expected to be playing good. Maybe not as good as we have seen them play these last couple of weeks, which has been a great sight for us to both see. But teams like the Orlando Magic are starting to make a little bit of a noise. And right now, if they were to win another game and the Pacers were to lose, they would be not playing in a playing game. So there's been a lot of teams that I've seen that have been very surprising for a good portion of this first half.
So, as crazy as this sounds, I think there are two different tiers among these top 6 teams in each conference. Tier 1 in the East is Boston and Boston alone. And then Tier 2 is Cleveland, Milwaukee, New York, and Philadelphia. I think
Excuse
those are the
my
two.
loud bang if you heard that in the background, but continue.
Those are the two different tiers I have. Boston is clearly heads and shoulders above everyone else. That's what we kind of had going into this season. And then seeds 2 through 5, I think, are interchangeable right now. Joel Embiid is going to be out for an extended period of time. So is Julius Randle.
They were saying 6 to 8 weeks for Embiid.
I know if they're saying 6 to 8 weeks, he's going to
might
be
be
really
longer.
early in fourth, aka he's probably out for the rest of the season. Maybe he's back for the playoffs, but that's neither here nor there. And then the West gets a little bit crazy because seeds 1 through 4 are interchangeable.
Mm-hmm.
The Clippers and Nuggets are half game back from being tied for the first seed with the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Minnesota Timberwolves. However, and this may be my bias, I would put the Clippers and the Nuggets in Tier 1A and then the Thunder and the Timberwolves in 1B. Only due to the playoff success and the playoff, I guess the individual success of the individuals on the Clippers and the Nuggets. Nuggets coming off a championship, and the Clippers have guys that have made deep playoff runs and even won multiple championships like Kawhi Leonard. They've got Paul George, James Harden. So these are guys that are used to at least getting to the NBA conference finals in the respective conferences, like Russell Westbrook and James Harden, PG-13. Excuse me, PG-24 now. And Kawhi is obviously a Finals MVP. While the Thunder and the Timberwolves are the young, exciting teams, right? You have SGA, you have Josh Giddey, you have Lou Dort, you have all these guys that Jalen Williams, Isaiah Joe, all these guys, right? And of course, you can't forget Chet Holmgren. All these guys that haven't really had any playoff success, but you really can't fault them. This is
Right.
Chet's first year in the league. This is
Because
Josh
they're
Giddey's third
only
league.
right, because their only experience last season was in the play-in. They didn't have much experience from
Right.
the playoff format other than those playing games.
And then you have the Timberwolves. Great team. Anthony Edwards, Karl Anthony Towns, Rudy Gobert, Jaden McDaniels, which I thought was one of the greater signings of the last couple of years. Really, really great player. Um, and then you have guys like the veteran leader, like Mike Conley, kind of the floor general. Grit and Grind Grizzlies, one of 5 players remaining from that 2007 draft class. So while Mike Conley may have some playoff experience, Rudy Gobert may have some playoff experience, just a little bit. Anthony Edwards, Karl Anthony Towns, they really don't have that. And those are your number 1 and 2 options. So for those reasons alone, I would put them in 1B, below the Clippers and the Nuggets. And obviously you have Kings and Suns, which ironically are kind of have the same record right now, but I think Phoenix will finish stronger just because, their roster, Bradley Beal,
And
Kevin
you
Durant,
could
et
still
cetera, et
make
cetera.
and you could still make the same case for New Orleans as well. They're also the same record as Phoenix and a half game behind Sacramento.
Yeah, it also comes down to playoff experience, so I think that's what really the deciding factors right now.
Right. And if you look at the same side of the Eastern Conference, where you have those top 5 teams, they all have the playoff experience from before. Then you look at a team like Indiana that hasn't had much playoff experience in terms of their star players, but
They're exciting.
they've had an exciting season. I mean, Tyrese Halliburton leads the league in assists per game. He's been one of their top scorers as well. They've been really doing good with what essentially doesn't seem like a great roster on hand. Obviously, you have guys like Miles Turner with this team, and you have to look at the team itself and say to yourself, how is it really working overall, and what has been their key to success? It's been realistically, they've been scoring a bunch of points throughout the entire season, and that's been a key for them getting to this spot in the year. They also got Pascal Siakam in a trade with the Raptors, so that now adds a
That's your
player that
playoff
can help.
success.
Exactly, that adds to your playoff mentality going into this postseason if they are able to reach that point. It looks to seem to be that is going to be the case for this team, but they're a nice young fun team, just like the Orlando Magic, who have been one of the more surprising teams in which they have this young core that we've seen develop, kind of like what we saw for the Thunder, where they assessed all these picks, they used them in the draft, they got these guys to develop, and right now it's all working for these couple teams. Now they're in a position where they can make the playoffs, get that playoff experience, and then down the line maybe try to get even further in the postseason. But when you speak about those teams that have been surprising, then you look to start to see the teams that have kind of been disappointing, because there certainly have been a couple of teams in the NBA this first half that have definitely been disappointing going into the second half. And they are probably going to be in the trade market in terms of selling coming up on this upcoming Thursday deadline.
Yeah, we had a couple of teams which I wasn't really high on, but you were high on, and we both kind of, I don't want to say took a beating like this, but we kind of both took a beating and stuff like this. Like, I wasn't
Yeah.
really too high on Golden State. That was one of the teams, like, you know what, I'm not too high on them. I'm going to slot them at my 8th seed. You slot them a little bit higher. However, you also had the Thunder in there, which was a complete miss for me. Number 1 team in the NBA was a complete miss for me. No one really saw the Thunder being this good this soon.
I
There's always
thought,
that team that was like, oh,
right.
they're coming, but we don't
I
know if
figured
they're
they
here
made the
yet.
play in last year. They won a play in game and almost got into the playoffs. And I figured they probably get another step forward this season. I just didn't think I wasn't gonna. I'm not gonna sit here and say, oh yeah, they're gonna be the best team in the Western Conference. I thought they would be another play-in team this year.
Yeah, and then you take a team like Golden State. I said when they were going to start Chris Paul and Clay Thompson, when they were going to run Clay Thompson at power forward, I said this team was cooked. I said I was going to give them the 8th seed out of respect because they've been there for so many years, but this team is finally cooked. This may be the end of the dynasty for Golden State.
And it's weird because Steph Curry is still having a very good season
Great
for
season.
this team,
If
but
listen, if this team had 32 wins right now, he'd be an MVP candidate.
Right. And because of that not happening, the Warriors currently are on the outside looking in. They would not be a playoff team if the season ended today. They're 2 games back, or excuse me, 1 game back for that final play-in team against for the Jazz. They're right now 22-25, and there's a possibility they could be trading some guys like Klay Thompson, maybe a Draymond Green or an Andrew Wiggins at this upcoming trade deadline on Thursday. Now,
So
the likelihood of that happening is probably unlikely, but the Warriors might have to try and think about their future if they want to have any success.
So we have to talk about this, and we'll go into this later. We have to talk about Steve Kerr's coaching pedigree now. We have to actually kind of question what he's been doing the last couple of years because I've been always one of the proponents that he was gift wrapped to this team by his front office and the previous coaching staff. Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, uh, with a little bit of luck. And if David Lee had never suffered that injury and was forced to start Draymond Green, I don't think this team ever starts. But that's how the greatest teams sometimes become great on accident. Does that make sense? Like no
Yeah.
one, like look at Tom Brady and the Patriots. Oh, if Drew Bledsoe never gets
Well,
hurt,
think about what happened
dynasty
for the
never
Warriors
happens.
when they got Curry. I mean, it was a string of luck that he fell to them at what was it, pick number 8 or 7 in that NBA draft?
Yeah, and 3 point guards went before him. Ricky
Right.
Rubio,
Johnny
Johnny Flynn,
Flynn, Ricky Rubio. I can't think of the other point guard. I know the Knicks obviously with the pick after, and they got Jordan Hill.
because the Knicks
And
wanted Curry. Never forget
yeah,
that.
yeah, never forget that. That still pains me to this day. But yeah, the Warriors they've been very lucky to have this type of a run. I mean, obviously Klay Thompson was a pretty good pick for them. I mean, that's not really saying much, but at the time you weren't expecting Klay Thompson to do what he's
Shooting
done
guard
for
from
this
Washington
team.
State, mid-round pick.
Draymond Green has been a great defensive player for this team. I mean, say what you want about his other antics on the court, but he's been really good for this team in terms of playmaking ability and for his defense. But they're hitting the stage of where a dynasty kind of ends, where you've won all these rings, you've had great success for how many years, but there comes a time during this run where you start to decline, your team starts to suffer from it, injuries and other things happen, and now of your organization, you have to look towards the future and try to look for the better well-being of your team, and that's probably where the Warriors are at right now, considering that they're 3 games under 500 going into this upcoming All-Star week.
Also, got to talk about the Memphis Grizzlies a little bit. I mean, we knew they
They
would have a
have,
short, they'd have a slow start with no job, but now with no job for the rest of the season, this team looks horrific.
yeah, I try to give them the benefit of the doubt when we were making our first half
I did too.
predictions.
I thought, okay, they'll be like maybe a 7 or 8 seed and sneak in there, but here they are, the
Yeah,
12 seed or 13 seed.
yeah,
Excuse me.
it has certainly been a rough year for Memphis, and we even saw what happened to them a couple days ago against Boston, where they had about 13 players that were not active for that game due to injuries or other things going on, and they started 8 or 9 players. They had to call up a bunch of G leaguers to play that game. But considering that this was a team that was the number 2 seed in the West last season, and now they're on the cusp of being one of the top 5 picks in the NBA lottery this upcoming season potentially.
Hey,
Yeah,
but this is
it's
how
been a rough
dynasties are
turnaround.
born, though. Steph
That's
Curry was
true.
injured, that he had ankle problems, and that's how they luck into better players.
Right. And think about that for the Warriors. I mean, go back to them. Jonathan Kuminga has looked pretty good for them these last couple of weeks, and
Yeah.
he's looking to be like a really good player for them in the next
And
couple of years.
again,
So,
this is why I question Steve Kerr a little bit because you have this guy sitting on your bench, and he looks like he's the second best player in the court right now.
right.
I don't,
So,
I, I don't know what the talent evaluation process is there, but you have to think about this. Going to go back to Memphis for a second here. Think
yeah, go
about
ahead.
David Robinson when he got injured for 1 year, right? Spurs worst team in the league. Who do they get? Tim Duncan, dynasty. I'm not saying it's going to happen for Memphis. Particularly, none of these draft picks really excite me. I don't think there's really a solid number one
Well,
guy. This could be the weakest draft in the last 10 years, but
you know what the other
never know.
issue is for Memphis is look at where they're currently slated out. They have 18 wins of the season. That's still not even one of the top 5 worst records in the league. You have teams like Detroit that have not even won 10 games. Washington
There's
has
four
not won
teams
10
in the
games.
Eastern Conference alone with worse records than that.
Right. And then you have Portland and San Antonio in the Western Conference. So that's 6 teams right there that are already worse than your team is. So maybe they still get a good player where they pick. Maybe they jump up in the lottery. Who knows? But yeah, it's been a rough year for the Grizzlies. But as you said, you never know. You could get a diamond in the rough sometimes you have these drafts. I mean, look at the 2013 draft with Giannis. No one expected anything in that draft, too. And turns out we got one of the best players of our entire generation for a plus decade almost. And
Nikola
Giannis,
Jokic was drafted during a Taco Bell commercial. I will never.
exactly.
He was the Crunchwrap Supreme took priority over him getting drafted, and he's the arguably the face of a Western Conference right now.
And he's on pace right now to win his second straight MVP. So he's got a really, I mean, or I should say second straight because I keep thinking he won last year, but it was Embiid that won. But it
It's
would
okay. We
be
all knew that he should have won. Embiid got his participation reward last year.
this would be would this would be his correct me if I'm wrong. Is this his
I think it's
second
third
MVP
MVP,
or would be his third? Okay. So he's on pace to win his third MVP.
and what should have been a
So
fourth, but
right. So say what you want about it, but Jokic is having another unbelievable season
and you
that's
can't even
showing
say, "Oh, he's the
with
fans
Denver's
don't
record.
like him." The fans don't like him because he was number two in I think in fan voting in the Western Conference, right behind LeBron, a guy who's been there for 20 years now.
Right. And then we look at what we did when we picked our original predictions. I think pretty much for the most part, we have almost every team that is in the playoffs for both sides. I think in the Western Conference, the only teams that
They're
I
like
have
12 for 14 right now, like
right, I think the
concurrently.
only teams that I didn't get right were Memphis and Golden State because right now they're not in the playoffs if the season ended today. I
Yeah,
think
those are the
every
teams
team
I'm missing too.
right, and I think in the Eastern Conference, I think the only teams that I got wrong was Atlanta. Atlanta is a playing team right now, but I don't consider that as what I was predicting at the beginning of the season. I did get Indiana right, which I'm happy to see. I think the Pacers are kind of proving that they are better than what we've seen, but it's been a pretty I wouldn't say predictable NBA season. There's still been a lot of unpredictability when it comes down to some of these surprises and disappointments from the NBA first half, but there's still a whole second half of the season to go on, and we could see these teams making runs. I mean, look at Cleveland, for example. This team was right was what maybe a 5 or 6 seed a couple weeks ago, and they've won 6 straight games, and now they're the number 2 seed in the Eastern Conference,
Yeah,
and
I
the
mean, a
season
lot
ended
has to
today.
happen. Like the Knicks have to lose their All Star. The Sixers have to lose their MVP candidate. The Bucks have to go get coached by
No,
Doc Rivers
but what?
now.
Well, no, what yeah, no, I agree with you. But what I'm getting at is that the 2 to 5 right now is kind of
It's all
interchangeable. It seems
interchangeable.
like
I would
in the
agree.
Eastern Conference because it seems like it's a lot of teams beating up at each other, injuries happening, and these teams taking advantage of it. And right now, Cleveland obviously is doing its job of taking advantage of that. And you've seen that in the Western Conference too, where you have the Clippers on a run. The Thunder have been great. The Timberwolves have been great. The Nuggets have been great. And those teams are all battling it out. A 4-team race for the 1 seed in the West. So there's still a lot to go on. And with the trade deadline coming up, if there are to be some big trades happening this upcoming deadline, that really leads to some of these teams potentially getting in a better position to getting into the playoffs and maybe making a run at an NBA championship. So who knows? But before we go into this upcoming weekend, the All Star week, I think let's go into some of the MVP debate. And we already spoke about it. It looks to seem that Nikola Jokic is going to win his third MVP of his career. Um, we both, I think we both predicted him to win MVP at the beginning of the season. So it looks to be that is going to, it most likely will stay that way. Joel Embiid, obviously, with his injury now, is effectively out of the MVP race. So he won't have a chance to go back to back. The next best option to beat Jokic for MVP is Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, who, as we all know, is having a monster season for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Is a big reason why they are tied for the 1 seed in the Western Conference. He's averaging 31 points a game. And you know how much he is as well when it comes to not only his offensive playmaking ability, but his defense. He also leads the league in steals per game. So he's been a
Nick.
huge reason why they are in this spot right now in the season.
So Nick, you went 3 for 3 on your picks. You had Jokic, SGA, and Giannis, and I had Jokic, Luca, and I had Steph Curry. Obviously, the Warriors fell apart, so he's not going to be up there. You look as according to odds, long shots. I'm sorry, short odds to long shots. It's Jokic, SGA, Giannis, Luca in that order.
And let's not forget Jalen Brunson's number 5.
And Jalen Brunson is number 5. I wanted to go into that because
Yeah.
we have to have a debate now, especially him carrying the load. And depending on the different sports books, for example, if you go to Caesars versus let's say Bet365, Bet365 has him at plus 25,000. Caesars has him at plus 2,500. So you can get a lot of arbitrage in here of different lines. Like Bet365 for SGA is 350.
Now,
Caesars is plus 240. So you can get a lot of different arbitrage here, and you can kind of shop your lines here.
now this is for SGA. You're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think Jokic has it pretty much locked up. I think it would take injury for him not to win it.
Yeah,
When
I mean, we said
obviously we're
that
not going
last
to,
year, and then
well, obviously we're not going to
the
want that
whole
to happen.
Philadelphia campaign media machine came out.
I
Oh,
don't. Yeah,
Jokic is boring. Look at this. And then he lost 2 games. He literally
listen.
lost 2 games in April, and people started
Yeah,
having a hissy fit saying, "Oh, this guy can't be MVP." And then Joel Embiid went from like plus 2,000 to like the
I
heavy
will
favorite
say
overnight.
SGA would be a fun MVP if he were to win. He's not go. I don't think he's going to win it.
He's not better
He
than
would.
Jokic, though. That's the problem.
No, but in terms of what he's done for the OKC, they would not be in the situation they'd be in right now without him. They need his. They need everything that he's given them this season. He definitely deserves to be commemorated for what he's done this year. But I agree with you. Jokic is the best player in the world right now. He's playing at an unbelievable level once again.
Yeah,
But
and that just goes to show that this really is this really Jokic's league now? If he wins three MVPs in let's say a 4 or 5 year span, is this his league now? Just how kind of like it was
it's
LeBron's
gonna
league
come
15
down.
years ago.
It's gonna come down to rings. It's
It
gonna come
is
down
go-
to rings.
it is going to come down to rings though. But if he manages to get 2 rings with Denver,
Well,
does that mean
you're gonna put him up in the conversation for sure of some of the biggest, some of the greatest centers of all time. Guys are like Shaq, Kareem, Wilt, um, all these big players of all time for centers. You're gonna start to put him in that conversation for sure if he could bring another championship or two to Denver, especially coinciding with maybe one, two, hell, three MVP awards in that time span.
I think all time center ranking Jokic off the top of my head is definitely top 10 without a question. He's might be top 5 because you have to remember the big man is such a historically dominant position. We may think in recent times it's become like a weak position. I mean, besides Shaq, the only really big man to win MVP in that 20-year stretch is Jokic. So
Right.
you have to think of all the great centers. You have to think, is he better than Shaq? Right now, no. Is he better than Kareem? No. Is he better than Dwight? Yeah, I think he's better
Yeah,
than
he's better
Dwight.
than White.
So
He's I would say he's not better than Shaq.
not better than
Not better
Kareem.
than Kareem. Not better than Wilt. Um, I don't know what you would say about Akeem because definitely deserves
Hakeem is
consideration
criminally
too.
underrated. I think him and Hakeem are a lot closer, but I would give the edge to Hakeem.
What about David Robinson?
That's when I think the debate starts here because David Robinson had a long, lengthy career. He is very underrated. He has an MVP. He has the All Star games. He has the first teams. He has the Defensive Player of the Year. Because he was such a defensive stalwart too.
Yeah,
I think David Robinson is just above him. But
but he
give
has
Jokic
time to beat
five
him.
years. Give Jokic let's have this conversation in 2029, and I think we're having a completely different conversation. But
And
I
then I
think
would
he's right
say,
outside the top 5.
Bill Russell would probably be better just because of what Russell did for that Celtics dynasty. I mean, he was we know he was an unbelievable player.
Yeah,
But
you
you're
assume at
right.
the end of this year he's got 6 All-Star games, he's got 3 MVPs, and he's got 6 All-NBA teams. He's 28 years old, prime of his career. His game's gonna age hopefully pretty good. You assume by the time he's maybe 33, 34, starts slowing down. So if he's got 10 and 10 with maybe 4 MVPs, then yeah, I think he's top 5 all time, at least with
Yeah.
centers.
But before we go into All Star Game, Johnson, is there anything else that has really surprised you or disappointed you in terms of maybe not even a team itself, maybe a player itself that has maybe surprised you? Is said to yourself, "Wow, I didn't think he was going to be doing this season," or a player that has been like, "Wow, I can't believe that he's really gone from a great career to now having this bad of a season this year."
Off topic or kind of on topic, can we talk about Kemba Walker?
Kemba Walker, what team is he even? Is he? He's not even in the NBA, is
Hold
he?
on. Hold on. So he's not in the NBA. He plays for AS Monaco. he comes off their bench and he scores
I
a couple points a game. This is a guy that 2 years ago, or about 3 years ago, was a starting caliber all star point guard for the Boston Celtics. And within 3 years, he goes from being an all star caliber guard to coming off the bench for a bottom of the barrel European
I
team.
remember when we were hyped when the Knicks got him a couple
Yeah,
years
it
ago.
was exciting. And then
I
that
was especially hyped.
little did we know that last year in Boston was the last year of his would be one of his final good years in the NBA. So that's one guy I want to mention. Just not in the
I was
NBA
not
more, but
expecting you to go there.
he's had such a fall from grace, and no one's really talking about him because, like you said, is he on a team? Not
Yeah,
really.
you could have fooled me. I was like, there's no way he's still playing the NBA.
Clay Thompson, another guy I want to talk about. It looks like everything is fine on the surface, but when you look at his defense and when you actually look at game film, you don't look at a box score. He's not the same Clay.
Look at the
Uh,
Warriors' last couple games terms too when you speak about that because they have lost some games this last couple of weeks where they've scored about like 130, 140, and they're still losing games.
Yeah, and it's because of a defensive effort.
Yeah.
That's the guy I want to kind of highlight. Great career so far, but to be kind of cooked at the age of 33, 34 years old, not a really great sign. Uh, any other guys I kind of really want to mention off the top of my head that's kind of had a fall from grace? Not particularly. One guy, I guess two guys I really have to give credit to this year. One, I don't really want to say this, but I think you have to give credit to Kristaps Porzingis.
Yeah,
I know he's
unfortunately,
had
as a
some
Knicks
injury
fan, you
problems
have to.
again. I know he's kind of back in the lineup. He missed a good portion of the season, a quarter of the season. But one of the knacks we had against him that he was too soft. He didn't want to play center, and he's averaging like 20 and 7 with a couple blocks a game now for the Boston team. And he's really anchoring that defense. It's not uncommon to see him get 10, 11, 12 rebounds in a night. Um, so that's one guy that we guess we have to give credit to. And of course, let's not forget to give credit to Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson, no Julius Randle, no OG Anunoby, leading teams. And when they had Julius Randle and they had OG Anunoby, uh, they were blanking teams. They were destroying the Nuggets by 40. They were destroying the Timberwolves, just complete annihilation when they had these all these guys. But Jalen Brunson's really stepped up the last couple weeks or the last 2 weeks without Julius Randle, without OG Anunoby. So that's a guy we have to look at again. Because when the Knicks initially signed Jalen Brunson, I thought, okay, if he became a 20-6 type point guard with good efficiency, I would be ecstatic with that signing. Now he's averaging 27 and 7 with one of the best 3 point shooting percentages in the NBA. Apps over the moon with his contract. So that's a guy that we really have to talk about. He should have been starting, but politics, whatever, NBA, yada yada.
Yeah, fan voting really screwed him on that one, but
Fan voting shouldn't be a thing. When
that should not be a
Zaza
thing.
Pachulia almost became an all-star starter, that's when you should have taken it away.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. No, I don't disagree with that at all. I mean, there's certainly been those players like that. I mean, you talked about the Warriors with Curry. I mean, I mentioned those two games where they lost. They lost one in double overtime. Curry had 40 in that game. Their last overtime loss against the Hawks, Curry had 60, and they still lost that game. So that's definitely been a disappointment in terms of what the Warriors season has been. And then for surprising, I mean, obviously, yeah, the Knicks being one of those top teams in the Eastern Conference right now, having a great opportunity to potentially be a top 2 seed in the East because of guys like Jalen Brunson and how they played, and then the OG Anunoby trade. At first, we were very skeptical of it because we were giving away Barrett and Manuel quickly. But in the grand scheme of things, it's worked out really well. Obviously, him being injured right now is not helping, but when he was playing, and obviously with Randall still there as well, the Knicks were one of the more unstoppable teams. And getting those two guys back for the playoff run would be huge for this team. And who knows what they do at the trade deadline? They're surely going to potentially make one deal at this deadline because they did give away a couple bench pieces in that trade for Anunoby. So they need to try to assess and get another bench piece for this playoff run.
And we'll go into the trade predictor later on, but I think that really sums up our first half recap. We've talked about the teams that disappointed, the players, MVP competition, conversation. Now we can talk about the All Star game.
Yeah, we have a interesting All Star weekend. That is for sure. I mean, obviously, we have our normal contest where we have the skills competition. Now we won't go into that tonight just because there hasn't been any participants announced as of yet. I think Wemby is the only player that has been confirmed for that event, so we'll see who eventually participates in that contest. But we have our usual 3-point contest, a special 3-point contest this year that we'll get into it in a little bit, as well as the dunk contest, and then the actual NBA All Star game as well as who we will decide who we think will be this year's NBA All Star game MVP. Now, obviously, as of today, we also found out that there are going to be two new participants for the Eastern Conference due to the injuries of Joel Embiid and Julius Randle. We'll get into those rosters in just a little bit. But let's go into some of the contests that we have going into NBA All Star weekend. We obviously will start off with the 3-point contest. And in that contest, we have Damian Lillard, Tyrese Halliburton, Donovan Mitchell, Malik Beasley, Lauri Markkanen, and Jalen Brunson. Johnson, I think I know where you're going to go with this pick, but who do you think wins the 3-point contest?
I got to go Jalen Brunson, right? I cannot not support him. So
Now,
I'm going
do
to go
you
with Jalen Brunson.
now is this one where let me paint a picture. Is this kind of like where it's like a home run derby in a sense where if you win the thing that it really, screws up with your shooting in the
Yeah, I
second
was
half of the
thinking about
season?
that, but I've never seen that happen before. So
Okay, I didn't know if that was a common trend for 3-point contests. I mean, obviously we've seen some of the greatest shooters in our game
well,
win, but yeah,
this is why I
I'm just
don't
trying to
think
figure it out.
it's a problem, because in the home run derby you're purposely slowing down balls and you becoming directly the direct center of the plate. So if you do that, say 100 times, the next time you go to swing a bat, your whole perception is going to be off. While
Right.
in the 3-point contest, it's your natural shooting motion. That's how these guys practice. So maybe a little bit, albeit a little bit sped up, but this is how they practice. So that's why it won't get broken.
Now, when I look at this field, Johnson, we have a bunch of all stars here, besides one. That's Malik Beasley.
He's very good. He's very
He
good
is
from downtown.
he's a very good 3-point shooter, and something tells me he might win this one because it always feels like when you get these contests, you always see like the star player, the star player, the star player, and then there's that
Scrappy
one
underdog.
guy, exactly the one guy you're not expecting to win it. I think people are going to be looking at Brunson to win. They're going to be looking at Mitchell and Lillard to win. Maybe not a Tyrese Halliburton because we have seen the last couple of weeks he's been on injury management and they're playing up to his minutes, so he hasn't been shooting the ball as much as these last couple of weeks. So that could, maybe affect him in this contest. And then Lauri Markkanen, we've seen, I think he's won a 3-point contest before, if I'm not mistaken. Or at least he was
He
close to
has.
winning one.
I think he was close.
Um, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. I completely forgot the history of who won. I don't even remember who won last year. So you could
It
probably
might have
tell
been
me.
Clay.
Um,
Was that 2 years
but
ago?
I couldn't tell you. um, I'm gonna go with Malik Beasley, regardless. I think you look at the field, you're expecting the. I think what I've seen from all sports, not even just the NBA, I think of all sports, it's expect the
It was
unexpected.
Dame last year.
It was Dame last year. Okay, so he's looking to repeat his as a champion this year. Um, regardless, I'm gonna go with Malik Beasley. I think you're looking to see if you'll get that unexpected player to win it, and I think Malik Beasley will be that unexpected guy. Obviously, I want Brunson to win. It'd be fun if he won. Not going to mush him fully if I pick him, so I'll go with Malik Beasley on this one.
And we also have a special 3-point competition between uh, Steph Curry and Sabrina. I'm not going to butcher her last name, so I'm not going to say anything.
I was
Ionescu?
trying. Yeah, I'll give you that. I don't want to butcher it either because I think I don't know how to pronounce it either.
Oh, I've heard it. I just can't wrap my mind. Listen, it's like I've got a very easy name. I'm very thankful for it. I think it's Sabrina Ionescu. I think that's how you say it.
I think you're right. I think you're right. So yeah, they're going to be participating in a 3-point contest this week. So obviously, we'll see what happens. Obviously, the first time we're going to have a NBA and a WNBA player going up against each other in this type of a contest. So, who do you think wins it? Does the greatest 3-point shooter of our generation in the NBA win it? Or do you think we get an upset from the WNBA?
So this is the problem I have with this, and I'm going to explain it because I'm going to pick Sabrina here, but this is my issue. She's shooting from NBA free, not NBA. She's shooting from WNBA 3-point range using the WNBA size regulation balls. If I think it was, they're both going to shoot from Steph NBA range or WNBA range. If it was equal, I think Steph would definitely win 99 out of 100 times. But since you have this variation, I'm going to go with Sabrina.
Okay. So yeah,
It's
now
really not.
keep.
It's like comparing like okay, like you have Usain Bolt and you have some other guy sprinting against each other, but you can get 100 meter head start on Usain Bolt. Would you really bet against? Would you really bet for Usain Bolt? I don't think I
I
would.
I think that's a good note that you brought up. That Sabrina is going to be shooting from the WNBA mandated 3 point line, and Curry's going to be shooting from the NBA mandated 3 point line. And obviously, with their respected sized balls with basketballs when they're shooting, so that is certainly something to bring up for this. I'll go with Sabrina just because she plays for the Liberty. Why not? Something good for something. The New Yorkers can celebrate. Why not? If
Besides the
Brunson and
Knicks
her,
title.
if Brunson and her can win this weekend, that you know what, that's great. That's great for
But
New
wait a
York
minute,
media.
there's more. We have the dunk
There is
contest
more,
too, Nick.
and there's a potential that a Nick could win that one too.
Yeah, because participants are Mac McClung, Jaime Jaquez Jr., Jacob Toppin, and Jalen Brown. I'm personally going to go roll with the Nick here, Jacob Toppin.
Okay, okay. Mac McClung obviously trying to repeat his championship from last season, but Jacob Toppin, the younger brother of Obi Toppin, looking to do what his brother did a couple years ago. Obi winning in 2022, so maybe it runs in the family potentially with these Toppins. It's tough. I mean, I will say we give Jalen Brown a lot of credit, discredit sometimes. I give him credit though this time because we haven't. When was the last time we had an All Star participate in this contest?
It's been a couple of years, maybe since the whole Zach Levine, Aaron Gordon
May-
fiasco.
Maybe. So I gotta give Jalen Brown credit for even participating in this.
I'll give him tons of credit for this. They're scared to participate because of the way the judging is, and I think it's gonna be awful again. And that'll be the end of it.
Um, I'm gonna go Mac McClung. I've seen it from college. I've seen it from his high school days,
See
and
it in
even last year's
person.
dunk contest. That's what I'm saying. I've seen it in person. He's one of the better dunkers we've seen. He'll probably win it again. So I'll
Bring
go with Mac
back Derek
McClung.
Jones Jr. He was exciting.
Bring back Derek Jones Jr. I still miss the days. I was talking about this yesterday, Johnson. I miss the days where we had guys like Gerald Green, where he would blow out cupcakes while dunking. I miss those
Yes,
days.
the
Nate
creativity.
Robinson, Nate Robinson with the Superman cape.
Blake
Oh,
Griffin dunking over IKEA.
I, I I miss
Even
those
though that
days,
was
man.
that was corporate sponsored and is rigged,
We
but that's besides the point.
we were spoiled as children where with some of the better dunk contests.
We were
We were
even the college years.
even the college years. But this all leads up to Sunday's NBA All Star game. Now, obviously, there's been some wrinkles where we've seen a couple players that are currently not going to be playing in this game due to injuries. We already mentioned Julius Randle and Joel Embiid are both out for this game, so they will be replaced. They are being replaced by Trey Young and Scotty Barnes. I'll go quickly into the rosters for both the East and the West. The stars for the Eastern Conference are Giannis, Tyrese Halliburton, Damian Lillard, and Jason Tatum. Embiid was a starter. He will obviously have to be replaced in the lineup. So you would have to think maybe it's going to be maybe one of their centers, maybe like a
Bam Adebayo.
Adebayo. Maybe they give Brunson an opportunity. I don't know if they would put him at guard, even though they already have two guards there. I doubt it. But the options they have for the bench, they have Bam Adebayo, Paulo Banchero, Scotty Barnes now, Jalen Brown, Jalen Brunson, Tyrese Maxey, Donovan Mitchell, and now Trey Young. And on the Western Conference side of things, for starters, you have LeBron James, Luka Doncic, Kevin Durant, SGA, and Nikola Jokic. And then their reserves are Devin Booker, Steph Curry, Anthony Davis, Anthony Edwards, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and Karl Anthony Towns. Going into this game, the current line for it is the Western Conference is a 2.5 point favorite. And that all important over under, Johnson, 364.5 points.
Well,
Who do you
it's
have
hard.
winning this game?
It's hard with the over under because of the Elam ending with the All
Yes.
Star game. So I'm not going to touch that. However, I will go East 2.5 points because this is what I'm going to go with. The All Star game in recent years has become about young players that want to prove themselves, right? So you have the vets that go in there like LeBron. Like, listen, I'm not saying LeBron phones in the All Star game, but a lot of them do phone in the All Star game. That's just how it goes. When you have the East, it has a lot of first and second and maybe even third time All Stars, while the West is kind of loaded with that talent that's been there for a while. PG, I keep on saying PG 13, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Kevin Durant, LeBron. These guys that have been here for years. While the East has a lot of fresh blood, so I'm gonna go with the East plus 2.5 with this one.
Okay. Now, would you like to also make your MVP prediction
Yeah,
for this
Jalen
game?
Brunson. He's gonna win the 3 point contest. He's gonna win the All Star
So
Game
it's going to be
MVP,
a
and then
monster week for New York, is what you're saying.
yeah, and then 4 months later, he's gonna win. He's gonna win NBA Finals MVP.
You are setting yourself up for a great failure, sir.
You know what? Let me have it.
Um, I will go. I'll play. I'll play it to the to the audience. I'll go with the Western Conference minus 2.5, and honestly, why not? I'll take the over under. Let me go. I'll go over. Why not? Am I really going to
It's
watch
an
an All
All
Star
Star
game?
game.
Am I going to really root for it under an All Star game? What's the fun in that? You keep in mind, I did say Sunday. It's next Sunday. Obviously, Sunday is Super Bowl, and the week after is the NBA All Star game, February 18th. Now, for my MVP prediction for this game, you know what? I talked about him earlier. I think SGA wins it.
Okay, he's a young hungry. He's a young hungry player. Makes sense
A
to
young,
me.
hungry player. You got all these bright stars that obviously have won in their time. Obviously, won MVPs, whether it be regular season or Finals MVP. You get to start to see the kind of the early stages of SGA being that guy, and I think you'll see it in this All Star game. I think you could see. I wouldn't be shocked if he gets near 30 plus, maybe 40 plus points in this game. So I'll go with SGA.
And that
Um,
sums up our NBA trade dead. Excuse me, NBA All Star Weekend prediction,
yes,
and we'll bring us to the next and final part of our show, where there's a lot of rumored trade candidates going around,
there
and
have been.
this will be done by Thursday, I believe.
Yes, well, this upcoming Thursday is the NBA trade deadline, so there's a lot of news going on, and there are certain players that are either going to potentially stay with their team or they could be on the move this upcoming deadline. So we'll go into certain players that we think could be traded or are a rumor to be traded in this deadline. Now this first guy, let's say his facts. I don't think he gets traded. There have been rumors the last couple of days because the Lakers have had a really up and down season, but LeBron James, we know he's going to be a free agent soon because of that player option he has. Do you think he works his way into maybe telling Rich Paul, listen, it's been great. We won a championship here, but I want to win one more ring potentially, and I want to get traded somewhere. Do you think LeBron goes?
I'm gonna say no. The only team which he probably would go to would be the Knicks, and Leon Rose isn't gonna trade for him. I know that he just had a sit down with Rich Paul where they kind of hashed out their differences. For anyone who doesn't know, Leon Rose is the general manager of the New York Knicks, and he's had long-standing issues with Rich Paul, who is Clutch, I believe Clutch Sports,
Yep.
and he is a CAA guy. He was a former CAA boss, so they've obviously had their differences, and they kind of got him hashed out this past weekend. So even though that meeting did happen, he's gonna stay a Laker. I'm gonna say no.
I would agree with you. I think he stays in LA. I think the only traction he'll have, maybe getting moved, is probably in free agency, where he'll opt out and play the market out and see where he goes. So I agree with you. I think he stays in Los Angeles. But then this next player, there's possibility he could be traded. Now, the Atlanta Hawks right now are one of the teams in the playoffs if the season ends today. They would be the last team in the Eastern Conference as the 10 seed. But there have been rumors that they might be trading DeJounte Murray at this upcoming trade deadline. Do you think he gets moved?
He's either going to be a Nick or he's going to be going or he's going nowhere. I don't think there's any other team. Dejounte Murray makes a lot of sense. They need that scoring punch off the bench. He's a great defensive player, knows how to move the ball. Would be really a seamless fit to be in that second unit. But if he's not going to be a Knick, he's not getting traded. So, but that's my prediction.
I think he gets traded, but I think it's going to the Lakers. I think
You think they're going to buy in? Interesting.
I think they're gonna try to at least get they're gonna try at least want to get one more ring out of LeBron. I think you have a guy like D'Angelo Russell who they could give up in a trade. You have first round. You can trade some picks that you have down the line, and maybe some younger players. Obviously, you'll have to figure out some salary cap issues as well when you make this deal. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Lakers try to make this move. They have been linked to DeJounte Murray for a while now. I think it's good as time as any to try to make that trade, especially with potential of LeBron maybe leaving you very soon. You want to try to at least get him one more opportunity to win a championship with you. I think if you get to Jonathan Murray, you have a good opportunity.
Next guy we have on the list is Bruce Brown. I personally think he's going nowhere. He's going to stay there. Um, I don't see him going anywhere.
Okay. And now remember, keep in mind, Brown was already traded this season, so this would be the second time he would be traded if he were to go. Um, Now this is the problem with this trade because we've heard the rumors that the Raptors they kind of want they basically want a first round pick for Bruce Brown. So it would be tough for some of these teams to make a deal to get this done for a guy like this. I think the issue for me, Johnson, is the Knicks are in a spot where they might be, they might say to themselves, listen, we need more bench pieces. We have an abundance of first round picks. Why not just make the trade? I think
I
if they
think it's
give
more
up
about.
this,
I think it's more about fit. That's the reason why I'm not going to say Knicks.
that's fair. I don't know if I don't know if
I
he
don't think we
can.
need another Josh Hart, Quentin Grimes type player.
Right. I don't know if I agree with that either. I think, maybe we should look at more of a center because we've had issues with, not even that, Hardside's not playing great. Simmons has been fine, but they haven't been like, we haven't had really healthy. We haven't been healthy at that position, especially down low with Randall now out as well. A power forward or small forward or some type of big man would be great for the Knicks. Um, you know what? I'll change my answer. I'm going to say no, and the only reason I'm going to say no is because there's another player on this list that I think might be better fitted for the Knicks.
I
So
think I
I'll
know which
say
one you're going to pick here, and I'm also
yeah.
probably going to agree with you, but we'll get there in a little bit.
We'll get there in a
Ne-
little bit.
Next, we have on the list is Andrew Wiggins. This is going to sound a little strange. I think he's going to be a Maverick.
Okay.
They really struggle at that wing position, and he could be a small ball four. They already have their center kind of locked up with Derek Lively from Duke, their first round pick this past year, and I think Wiggins would be a great scoring option to take the pressure off Luka.
Well, you think about it. You also have Kyrie Irving, so they have you have your backcourt, um, or your front court. I always mix that up.
It's your backcourt.
Um, I was right originally. Okay, I shouldn't have said anything. Um, you have that already set up. You've been start. The problem is for the Mavericks, they've been starting Tim Hardaway Jr. for a while, and nothing disrespect to Tim Hardaway Jr. I liked him when he was a Knick, but if you can get an upgrade in a guy like Andrew Wiggins, a former number one overall pick, that would be huge for Dallas. And I honestly like the fit. I agree with you. I think if there's going to be a team that could get Andrew Wiggins, I think it could be Dallas. So I wouldn't be shocked if Dallas, goes out, talks to the Warriors, maybe gives up guys like Tim Hardaway. They got Grant Williams in the offseason. Maybe they trade him. And maybe they trade Seth Curry and pair him up with Steph. I could see it happen.
All right, I'm gonna have a lot more boring picks coming up. First was Kyle Kuzma, fearless leader of the 9-win Washington Wizards. Even
What
though
a
they've had a
rough, yeah.
horrific season, he's not going anywhere. I think he's gonna be a Wizard
Well, remember he signed that big contract in the offseason.
extension.
We
So
thought
he,
we thought he was leaving them for sure.
I don't think they're gonna deal him after signing him. Makes no sense. The
I
value
I,
wasn't
I
there.
agree. I don't think he gets traded either. What about Jordan Clarkson? What do you think about him?
I think he's either gonna be a Nick or he's not or he's gonna stay put.
Yeah, the Jazz are in a weird spot because they've been rumored to trade Clarkson, but they've also been kind of teetering on fringe playoff or play-in team the last couple of weeks. I agree that it's either Knicks or nowhere. I'm going to say no. I think he stays in Utah because I think the final player that we talk about is the guy that I think the Knicks go out and get because of the team that he's currently on. What about DeMar DeRozan? Do you think he gets traded?
It's hard because with the Zach LaVine injury, I thought he wasn't going anywhere, but now they probably want to squeeze some value out of him. Uh, this is gonna sound crazy. I think he has the potential to be a Laker. However, I think he's not going to go anywhere. I think if there are two teams, I think he was going to go to mid-season. It would have been the Heat or it would have been the Lakers. He would have been gone home to California to play for his hometown team. I know he's not from Los Angeles; he is from, I believe, Compton. But it would have
Yeah,
been his
you're
home
right.
state team. So I'm gonna go. I'm gonna say bold. Just to make it not boring. I'm gonna say Lakers.
You say Lakers? Okay. Uh, I don't think he gets traded. I think it's another situation where I'm pretty sure he's also coming up with an expiring deal soon as well. So I'm not sure how many teams will really realistically want to get involved. You got to think about this also. If you want to get DeRozan at his best, now is the time because there's going to be that point where he starts declining. I just don't know what his value is right now. That's what is really
A single first round pick that's heavily protected.
right. So I like a team might pull the trigger on that for sure. I just don't know who would pull like who was going to do it. I would think that they just stay pat, they keep him, and then who knows what the Bulls do in the offseason because they have a weird team where you can't tell if they're a good team or a bad team. They're kind of just mid. What do you think
And we
about
have
Jeremy Grant?
So I was going to say we have two more players left, both are Trailblazers, Jeremy Grant and Malcolm Brogdon. I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say that Malcolm Brogdon is going to stay put, but I think Jeremy Grant is going to go to Miami.
Okay. Miami would be an interesting fit. I mean, right now they are the 8 seed, so they could use some help.
I think they're going to end up
Um,
buying. People said that Jimmy Butler's going to get traded to the Knicks. I think Pat Riley would fake a heart attack on live television before that happens. So I think they're going to buy in more, try to get one more at least playoff run out of Jimmy Butler. And I think he's gonna be. I think he's gonna be a member of the Miami Heat.
I could see Philadelphia making a move for Jeremy Grant. I
That'd be kind of
think
full circle.
it would be interesting because you obviously lost Embiid. Now, I'm not saying he could play center for you immediately. Like he can't play
But he's still
center,
front court minutes.
but he could still get you those minutes where you need. He could play the four if needed be, and they still have Tobias Harris who could play the three. So you have those guys that can fill that role of a big bodied forward that can get you rebounds and stuff like that. Where that's what you're missing from Embiid right now, and you need defense as well. Jeremy Grant can fill that role. Obviously, he just signed a contract extension in the offseason as well. He was another one of those guys that we expected to be going to a different team in the offseason, but ended up staying with his former team. I think if a team could make a move for him, I think it could be Philadelphia.
Yeah, I mean it'd be a full circle type moment. He started off as a member of the Sixers back in 2014,
Yeah.
second round pick out of Syracuse. So this would be a full round, a full career moment for him. Just coming back to the place that drafted him. But I think he's perfect on Portland right now. Hometown team gets to stay with family and friends, getting paid tens of millions of dollars to be a. I don't want to say fringe all star, but at least in that conversation of upper echelon, very good NBA players. Um,
Another team I could see make a move for him, maybe OKC bringing him back there too.
Yeah, that's another. That'd be another good fit. I think that was the second team he left right after. Right, he went
He
from
was, yeah.
Philadelphia to OKC. Yep. Then he went to Denver, Detroit. Yep.
I'm going full circle with Jeremy Graham for this one.
So Philadelphia or OKC.
That's what I'm gonna go with. Philadelphia or OKC. I think that's where if he were to get traded, that would be where I would say. And then
And
our final player is a member of the Blazers, as you mentioned, Malcolm Brogdon. What do you think? Do you think he goes anywhere, or do you think he stays
I
put?
think he stays put. I don't think he's gonna get dealt anywhere.
Okay. Yeah, I think for me, I think you're going to be looking at where you're trying to make a move. If you're Portland, I think Brogdon's probably one of those guys that you want to try to move with as a deadline. I think the two teams for me that could make the move for him would be the Knicks or the Magic. I think when you look at the Magic, we know they've taken a lot of guards these last couple of drafts, but the size of their guards have been an issue, as well as their outside shooting. And I think if you were to get an more experienced guard for a playoff run potentially, instead of a young guard that has no playoff experience, especially with you being right now a fringe top 6 seed, 7 seed in the Eastern Conference, that'd be big for them. Obviously, teams like the Knicks and Lakers are going to be on him because they also could use guards. I could see the Knicks making the move for him. It's more than the Bruce Brown trade because I think he can provide a little bit more to the Knicks than Bruce Brown can, in which he gives you another guy behind Brunson. You could maybe start him some days where Anunoby, if he were to get hurt, you could start him at the 2 and you move DiVincenzo to the 3 if you want to. I could see that being a nice fit for New York as well. I would say the Knicks or Magic are probably the best landing spots for him if he were to get dealt.
All right, I think that kind of wraps up here. Do you have any other comments before we kind of wrap up our first half NBA preview? We'll be back with football next week, and
Yep,
that's when things kind of get weird.
Yeah, obviously Super Bowl Sunday's upcoming this week. Any you want to make any last minute changes to your Super Bowl pick, or are you gonna stick with what you got?
Nope, I picked the Chiefs, and the Chiefs are going to win. So
Okay, I am sticking with my pick because I'm trying to at least tie you for this upcoming for this past NFL season. So we'll see. But in terms of NBA, yeah, once we recap next week's NFL season, the Super Bowl, we're going to be going into a swing where we're looking at the offseason of the NFL as well as the NFL draft's coming up soon. A couple months away. Free agency is also coming up in the NFL, and then for the NBA itself, we'll be sure if there's some big trades going down the deadline. We'll definitely recap that. The All-Star game's coming up, and Johnson, as you and I both know, next month is March. That means March Madness is coming up soon too. So we got some college basketball to not only recap for this season, but we got some March Madness picks to make this year, and we had a pretty fun bracket we had last season. So stay tuned. Yep. Who knows what happens this year?
Yep, it's a time of year where football takes a back seat and every other sport takes the front seat.
Yeah, and I forgot them. And as you mentioned, every sport gets to take a front seat, and I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up MLB is also coming up too. We almost have opening day coming around. Still not as much free agency traction the last couple of weeks, but still have a baseball season coming up as well. So we're going into that stretch where the NFL is taking a step back. Do have some things coming up in the NFL, but we have these other sports to cover, and that's why we're giving you an NBA episode tonight. Our first NBA episode in a couple months. And you know what? The NBA has definitely not disappointed us I shouldn't say upcoming, but for this previous first half that we just had, that is still going on as of now, that will be wrapping up in a couple of days, and going into the second half of the season where we'll see a lot of traction, maybe not only the trade deadline, but in terms of teams trying to make that, those last second pushes to make a potential NBA championship run. So we'll have to see how it all goes down for this NBA season. And can we see maybe the Nuggets repeat? Can we see a new NBA champion this year? I think that's the fun of this NBA season. I think there's a lot of unpredictability when it comes down to it. And I'm sure we'll see a lot of it going down the next couple of weeks and months. But that is going to do it for this week's edition of the All Gas No Break Sports Show. The first half of the NBA season is pretty much almost wrapped up. NBA trade deadline is this Thursday. The All-Star game is next Sunday. And as we all know, for the NFL, we have the Super Bowl this Sunday. Next week here on the show, we will recap that Super Bowl as well as give our takes on the game itself, looking ahead into the 2024-2025 NFL season. Should be a doozy next week here on the show. This has been Nicholas Pavona, joined alongside by Andrew Johnson with the All Gas No Break Sports Show. Have a great rest of your week.